your subject. So here at St Gregory's, everybody is required to sit 2 different GCSE courses. So that means every single time you go into your English lesson, you are preparing to not just attain 1 GCSE, but 2 GCSEs. The first GCSE is in English language. The English language GCSE is in itself made up of 2 different exam papers. The first exam paper is called Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing, and as the title would suggest, this paper invites you to focus on works of fiction. You will be asked to answer questions about an unseen fiction text, and you will in turn be asked to create your own short story in relation to a prompt that should be somewhat related to the fiction text you're given on the reading section of the paper. The second paper that you will sit for your GCSE in English language is all about writers' viewpoints and perspectives. And so for the first paper, you are asked to focus on fiction texts. For this paper, you are asked to focus on non-fiction texts. So for this exam paper, you will be given 2 different non-fiction texts. You will have to write responses about these texts sort of individually on their own, and you will have to write responses about both texts, comparing the viewpoints and perspectives, as the title suggests, of the authors that have written them. And both of these articles will be about a similar topic. Just like in the previous paper, in paper 1, you will also be required to complete a writing task, but here you will have to write a piece of non-fiction. It could be an article, it could be a letter, it could be a journal entry, it could be a speech, but regardless, paper 1, fiction, paper 2, non-fiction. So that's your first GCSE that you'll be working towards in your English classes. Your second is the GCSE in English literature. Now, the things what's worth noting for both of these GCSEs is that they are similar in some respects. They both assess similar skills. So the skills that you will be developing in every single English class will be transferable between the 2 GCSEs and all of the exam papers that you will be sitting. For example, both GCSEs aim to develop and assess your skills when it comes to language analysis and analysis of structure. Both of these GCSEs, both language and literature, invite you to develop your understanding of how writers convey meaning, convey their own opinions. But when it comes to the GCSE in English literature, there's an added layer to that isn't present in the English language GCSE, in that you are studying very specific works of literature. In fact, for the GCSE in English literature, you will get to study some of the most important and influential pieces of literature in British history by some of the most important and influential writers in British history. On our curriculum here at St Gregory's, you'll be required to learn about 1 Shakespeare play, either Romeo and Juliet or Macbeth. You will be required to study the play An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley, which is fantastic. That's very popular with students. A lot of people love that one. You will be required to read and will be assessed on The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and we always introduce our students to that on the half term running up to Christmas, so it's nice and festive. And then finally, you will be assessed on an anthology of poetry that is based around the theme of power and conflict. So an anthology just means sort of a collection of poems, and all of these poems will be themed around either power or conflict, i.e. war poetry.
I love studying English literature because I found it very interesting to learn about the different forms of text and why poets and writers in general have written what they have. Well, we learn about different types of text, so there's obviously poetry, and then we do different plays as well, so we learn about Macbeth. Personally, I love doing poetry. I love that we got to annotate the poems and then we'd share our answers with the rest of the class to see what other people thought about what was going on in the poem. I found that English literature has introduced me to so much more of the literary heritage that's out there that I never knew was there before, and I'd never actually deeply looked into it. It's fascinating because you don't just like look at the text and think about, oh, what's been written, what are they trying to say. You delve a bit deeper into the text and think about, well, why is the author or poet written this, and what are they trying to put across to us, which I thought was really interesting. I love English language because when I first heard we were doing English language, I didn't think I'd be that interested in it, but it completely changed my perspective on non-fiction texts and different types of texts that I'd never actually looked at before, which I thought was really interesting and engaging for me. In one of our lessons, we looked at different texts. So we compared a text from, I think it was the 19th century, and one from the 21st century. And it was about festivals. And I thought that was great because it was more current and relevant learning about festivals, and then we got to be more creative and make fact files to then move on so that we could do our own piece of non-fiction text, which I thought was quite fun for me personally. I've found that English language is a very important subject because it's to help me to develop my reading and writing skills when looking at non-fiction texts or texts that I've never seen before that I feel will quite help me in the future as well.